Hi friends, so once again we are back as we were doing NCRT discussion and we have started the discussion of the class 12 NCRT book which is your themes in Indian history. Okay, so we have been able to complete themes 1, that is bricks, spades and bones, and we were doing themes 2. Okay, so let us continue from where we have stopped last time. Okay, just give me one second. I think we are about to complete chapter number 2 as well. Yes, so this much thing we have covered. Now let us go and discuss about the coins and kings. To some extent, exchange were facilitated by introduction of coinage. Punchmark coins were made of silver and copper. So silver coins were made up of silver and copper. Were amongst the earliest to be minted and used. These have been recovered from excavations at a number of sites throughout the subcontinent. Numismatists have studied these and other coins to reconstruct possible commercial networks. Attempts made to identify the symbols on punch-marked coins with specific ruling dynasties, including the Mauryas, suggest that these were issued by kings. It is also likely that merchants, bankers, and townspeople issued some of these coins. The first coins to bear the names and images of rulers were issued by the Indo-Greeks who established control over the northwestern part of the subcontinent. 2nd century BC. Periplus. Periplus is a Greek word meaning sailing around, and it is a Greek name for Red Sea. The first gold coins were issued in first century by Kusana. So questions may be asked that who has issued the first gold coin? So it was Kusana. These were virtually identical in weight with those issued by contemporary Roman emperors and Parthian rulers of Iran, and have been found from several sites in North India and Central Asia. The widespread use of gold coins indicates the enormous value of the transactions that were taking place. Besides, hoards of Roman coins have been found from archaeological sites in South India. So please we remember that the hoards of Roman coins have been found from where? From archaeological sites in South India. It is obvious that networks of trade were not confined within political boundaries. South India was not part of the Roman Empire, but there were close connections through trade. Coins were also issued by tribal republics such as that of the Yudhyas of Punjab and Haryana. Archaeologists have unearthed several thousand copper coins issued by the Yudhyas, pointing to the latter's interest and participation in economic exchanges. Some of the most spectacular gold coins were issued by the Gupta rulers. So, spectacular gold coins were issued by the Gupta rulers. The earliest issues are remarkable for their purity. These coins facilitated long-distance transactions from which kings also benefited. Numismatics is the study of. So, what is numismatics? It is the study of coins, including visual elements such as scripts and images, metallurgical analysis, and the context in which they have been found. So, this is the punch mark coin. So named because symbols were punched or stamped onto the metal surface. From 6th century onwards, finds of gold coins taper off. This indicate that there was some kind of an economic crisis? Historians are divided on this issue. Some suggest that with the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, long-distance trade declined, and this affected the prosperity of the states, communities, and regions that had benefited from it. Others argue that the new towns and networks of trade started emerging around this time. They also point out that though finds of coins of that time are fewer, coins continue to be mentioned in the inscriptions and text? Could it be that there are fewer finds because coins were in circulation rather than being hoarded? Uh, Yudhaya coin, now a Gupta coin. This is a Gupta coin. Okay, so you see, this is a kind of purity. It is showing the purity. If you have ever seen the gold, you will see that the color of gold is yellow. Okay, and if it is more yellow, it means that it is having good quality of purity. Okay, now moving next. So this is an Asukan inscription. You can see this is the Asukan inscription. This is Ko, this is Jo, this is Dha, the Moro. So it is called Asokan Brahmi. So it is a Brahmi script which is written by Asoka. Okay, back to the basics. Now we are talking about back to the basics. How are inscriptions deciphered? How are inscriptions deciphered? So far, we have been studying excerpts from inscriptions, amongst other things. But how do historians find out what is written on them? Deciphering Brahmi. Most scripts used to write modern Indian languages are derived from Brahmi. The script used in most Asokan, the script used in most Asokan inscriptions. From the late 18th century, European scholars aided by Indian Pandits have worked backwards from contemporary Bengali and Devanagari. The script used to write Hindi manuscripts, comparing their letters with elder specimens. Scholars who study early inscriptions sometimes assume these were in Sanskrit. Although the earliest inscriptions were in fact in Prakrit, it was only after decades of painstaking investigation of several epigraphists that James Priestley was able to decipher Asokan Brahmi in 1838. So who has deciphered the Asokan Brahmi? It was James Prinsep in 1838. How Khrosti was read. The story of decipherment of Khrosti used in inscriptions in the northwest is different. Here, finds of coins of Indo-Greek kings who ruled over the area 2nd century BC have facilitated matters. These coins contain the names of kings written in Greek and Khrosti scripts. European scholars who could read the former compared the letters. For instance, the symbol for could be found in both scripts for writing names such as Apollodotus, with principles identifying the language of the Crostian scripts as Prakrit. It became possible to read longer inscriptions as well. Uh, Historical evidence from inscriptions. To find out how epigraphists and historians work, let us look at two Asokan inscriptions more closely. Note that the name of the ruler Asoka is not mentioned in the inscription. What is used instead are titles adopted by ruler Deva Devananpiya, often translated as beloved of the god, and Piya Dasi as pleasant of beloved. Asuka. The name Asoka is mentioned in some other inscriptions which also contain these titles. After examining all these inscriptions and finding that they match in terms of content, style, language, and paleography, epigraphists have concluded that they were issued by same ruler. You may also have noticed that Asoka claims that earlier rulers had no arrangements to receive reports. If you consider the political history of the subcontinent prior to Asoka, do you think this statement is true? Historians have to constantly assess statements made in inscriptions to judge whether they are true, apologies, or exaggerations. Did you notice that these there are words within brackets? Epigraphists sometimes add these to make the meaning of sentences clear. This has to be done carefully to ensure that the intended meaning of the author is not changed. The authors of the king thus speaks. Historians have to make other assessments as well. Historians have to make other assessments as well. If a king's orders were inscribed on natural rocks near cities or important routes of communication, but passerby have stopped to read these. Most people were probably not literate. Did everybody throughout the subcontinent understand the Prakrit used in Patliputra? Would the orders of the king have been followed? Answers to such questions are not always easy to find. Some of these problems are evident if we look at an Ashokan inscription, which has often been interpreted as reflecting the anguish of the ruler, as well as marking a change in his attitude towards warfare. The anguish of the king. When the king Devanama Piya Piyadasi had been ruling for 8 years, the country of the con- the Kalinga's present day coastal Orissa was conquered by him. 150,000 men were deported, 100,000 were killed, and many more died. After that, now that the country of the Kalingas has been taken, Deva Nampiya is devoted to an intense study of Dhamma, to love of Dhamma, and to instructing the people in Dhamma. This is a repentance of Deva Nampiya on account of his conquest of the country of Kalingas. For this is considered very painful and deplorable by Deva Nampiya that while one is conquering an unconquered slaughter, death, and deprivation of people there. As we shall see, the situation becomes more complex once we move beyond reading the inscription at face value. While Ashokan inscriptions have been found in present-day Orissa, the one depicting his anguish is missing. In other words, the inscription has not been found in the region that was conquered. What are we to make of the Is it that the anguish of the recent conquest was too painful in the region and therefore the ruler was unable to address the issue? The limitations of inscriptional evidence. By now, it is probably evident that there are limits to what epigraphy can reveal. Sometimes there are technical limitations, letters are very faintly engraved, and thus reconstructions are uncertain. Also, inscriptions may be damaged or letters missing. Besides, it is not always easy to be sure about the exact meaning of the words used in the inscriptions, some of which may be specific to a particular place or time. If you go through an epigraphic journal, some are listed in timetable too, you will realize that scholars are constantly debating and discussing alternative ways of reading inscriptions. Although several thousand inscriptions have been discovered, not all have been deciphered, published, and translated. Besides, many more inscriptions must have existed not survived the which have not survive the revenge of time. So, what is available at present is probably only a fraction of what was inscribed. There is another, perhaps more fundamental problem. Not everything that we may consider politically or economically significant was necessarily recorded in inscriptions. For instance, routine agriculture practices and the joys and sorrows of daily existence find no mention in the inscription, which focus more often than not on grand, unique events. Let me zoom it. For instance, so we have done, besides the content of the inscription, almost invariably projects the irrespective of the persons who commission them. As much they need to be juxtaposed with other perspectives so as to arrive at better understanding of the past. Thus, epigraphy alone does not provide a full understanding of political and economic history. Also, historians often question both old and new evidence. Scholars in the late 19th and early 20th centuries were primarily interested in the histories of the kings. From the mid 20th century onwards, issues such as economic change and the ways in which different social groups must have assumed far more importance. Recent decades have seen a much greater preoccupation with histories of marginalized groups. This will probably lead to fresh investigations of old sources and the development of new strategy of analysis. Major political and economic developments. Major political and economic developments. Paddy transplantation, urbanization in the Ganga Valley. It is difficult to date economic development precisely. Also, there are enormous subcontinent variations which have not been indicated in the timeline. Only the earliest dates for specific developments have been given. The date of Kanishka's accession is not certain, and this has not been marked with a. Hi friends, so we have finished the chapter number 2. Okay, now it is time to move to move for the further discussion of the chapter number 3, which is kinship, caste, and class from 6 BC to 600 BC. Okay, so let us explore. In the previous chapter, we saw that there were several changes in economic and political life between 600 BCE to 600 CE. Some of these changes influenced societies as well. For instance, the extension of agriculture into forested areas transformed the lives of forest dwellers. Craft specialists often emerged as distinct social groups. The unequal distribution of wealth sharpened social differences. Historians often use textual traditions to understand these processes. Some texts lay down norms of social behavior, others describe and occasionally comment on a wide range of social situations and practices. We can also catch a glimpse of some social actors from inscriptions. As we will see, each text and inscription was written from the perspective of a specific social categories. So we need to keep in mind who composed what and for whom. We also need to consider the language used and the ways in which the text circulated. Used carefully, text allow us to piece together attitudes and practices that shaped social histories. In focusing on the Mahabharata colossal epic running in its present form into over 1 lakh verses with a depiction of a wide range of social categories and situations, we draw on one of the richest texts of the subcontinent. It was composed over a period of about 1000 years 1000 years onwards, and some of the stories it contains may have been circulation even earlier. The central story is about two sets of varying cousins. The text also contains sections laying down norms of behavior for various social groups. Occasionally, though not always, the principal characters seem to follow these norms. What does conformity with norms and deviations from them signify? A terracotta sculpture depicting a scene from Mahabharata, West Bengal. The critical edition of the Mahabharata, one of the most ambitious projects of scholarship began in 1919 under the leadership of a noted Indian Sanskritist B.S. Sukhthankar. A team comprising dozens of scholars initiated the task of preparing a critical edition of the Mahabharata. What exactly did this involve? Initially, it meant collecting Sanskrit manuscripts of the text written in a variety of scripts from different parts of the country. The team worked out a method of comparing verses from each manuscript. Ultimately, they selected the verses that appeared common to most versions and published these in several volumes, running into over 13,000 pages. The project took 47 years to complete. Two things became apparent. There were several common elements in the Sanskrit versions of the story, evident in manuscripts found all over the subcontinent, from Kashmir and Nepal in north to Kerala and Tamil Nadu in south. Also evident were enormous regional variations in the ways in which the text had been transmitted over the centuries. These variations were documented in footnotes and appendices to the main text. Taken together, more than half of the 13,000 pages are devoted to these variations. In a sense, these variations are reflective of the complex processes that shaped early and later social histories. Through dialogues between dominant traditions and resilient local ideas and practices, these dialogues are characterized by moments of conflict as well as consensus. Our understanding of these processes is derived primarily from texts written in Sanskrit by and for Brahmanas. When issues of social history were explored for the first time by historians in the 19th and 20th centuries, they tend to take these texts at face value, believing that everything that was laid down in these texts was actually practiced. Subsequently, scholars began studying other traditions from works in Pali, Prakrit, and Tamil. These studies indicated that the ideas contained in normative Sanskrit texts were, on the whole, recognized as authoritative. They were also questioned and they occasionally even rejected. It is important to keep this in mind as we examine how stories reconstruct social histories. A section of the page from Critical Edition. Kinship and marriage and many rules and varied practices. Finding out about families. We often take family life for granted. However, you may have noticed that not all families are identical. They vary in terms of numbers of members, their relationship with one another, as well as the kinds of activities they share. Often, people belonging to the same family share food and other resources and live, work, and perform rituals together. Families are usually parts of larger networks of people defined as relatives, or to use a more technical term, kinfolk. While familial lies are often regarded as natural and based on blood, they are defined in many different ways. For instance, some societies regard cousins as being blood relation, whereas some others do not. For early societies, historians can retrieve information about elite families fairly easily. It is, however, far more difficult to reconstruct the familial relationships of ordinary people. Historians also investigate and analyze attitudes towards family and kinship. These are important because they provide an insight into people's thinking. It is likely that some of these ideas would have shaped our actions, shaped our actions just as actions may have led to changes in attitudes. Terms for family and kin. Sanskrit text use the term kula to designate families and jati for larger network of folk. The term vamsa is used for lineage because they provide an in a sense, these variations are reflective of the complex process that's these are important because they provide an insight into people's thinking. It is likely that the idea of Bertolini. Can we identify points when kinship relations change at one place, one level, and Mahabharata is a story about this. It describes a feud. For today's discussion, we stop here. Thank you very much. We'll meet again next time. Okay.